What's going on, YouTube? It's your homie Yugi Skull. Happy 2025, guys. Um, saw some great conversations on the Voiceless Facebook group, so I thought to do a nice coverage around the Voiceless voice matchup with the new Malice archetype, right? So I have a pretty good, I think, understanding of the matchup. I think we stack up pretty well against that matchup, and ultimately, I just want to go through this one really good gameplay that I had with my really good friend who is on the archetype of Malice, and just to kind of go over what we can essentially accomplish, what are some key areas to prioritize, and where our deck ultimately can shine and outpace them and beat them, essentially. So let's get right into it. This is a 2-0 shutout of in the matchup, which is really nice. And I lost the dice roller. I lost the rock, paper, scissors. So just to keep that in mind. Cool. Let's get right into it. So right off the bat, looks like they opened with Valor, Imperm. They did brick sort of with Dotscaper as well as their MTP07, which is going to be their adding trap card. So it adds from the deck to hand. Then if you control a link, you can banish one card on the field. So it's add plus non-target banish. Really good. They can also use this card, um, as you guys know, on the same turn, just simply by banishing a Malice monster for cost, essentially, for summoning, for activation condition. And then he obviously opened up with one of his starters, the Malice, he White Rabbit. So he summons it, and I believe he goes for TB11, which is going to banish and special summon from the deck. And if I control more monsters, you can do special summon a Link, disregarding its actual Link summon. And then I immediately ashed out. I recognize that maybe his hand isn't the greatest because when they tend to go, well, first of all, I didn't open up the Dormouse, right? He normal summoned the White Rabbit, so arguably the Dormouse is just a better starter. And then he immediately went for the TB11, so you ash that, right? It's your one hand trap. You just might as well just ash that. Really good, I think, point right there to just ash the 11. Another good ash point is, I believe, their white binder. If they're trying to actually recur back their white binder from the banishment pile, you can actually ash that because it's going to special summon plus add one plus draw one. So you can actually, it's all one effect. So you can actually ash that and cut them off from special summoning an integral level 3 back to the board from their banishment zone. So yeah, that's another good one. Also, if they do like Allure of Darkness, feel free to ash that as well. Or even I wouldn't ash their engage. They might have another one. But for me, I would ash the alerts because it's draw two plus an extender. Because if they're activating it, like right from the get-go, they probably do have something in hand to banish. So it's technically a +3 because they're drawing two, and then they're able to get a free summon, a free special summon off of whatever Malice monster they're gonna be banishing. Cool. Let's see what else he does. So yeah, he bricked, he sets the imperm. So really what we're actually up against here is really two hand traps. So not an ideal game one for the Malice player, of course. And the great news is here we're opening up with so we had the Ash, obviously, which we used. We did kind of draw the brick, which is the prayers, Diviner, and Saphira, as well as Trias and pre-prep. Very strong hand. Right from the get-go. I don't remember what I did here, but I can just guarantee you I opened with Diviner just to dodge something with Trias. Just to bait out some of the like that unknown set that we didn't see, or even this one that he just set unknowingly. But yeah, let's get right into it. So yeah, we go in with the diviner. He imperms, of course, you kind of have to. And then we tribute for cost. Obviously, we dodge. And then what happens here is I did end up dumping the end test because I wanted to respect that additional unknown back row. But in a different world, you can just send your herald, and that way you're chain blocking your diviner as chain link one. So that way you're guaranteeing that um this this hand ultimately does get to low. So I did absolutely take that risk in terms of like, using it. Does like for me, I felt like what was more of a threat was whether this back row instead of like an actual Ash in hand, just because the back row could be so many things, but Ash is just one card, right? It's three cards of 40. So in my mind, that just seemed like less of a risk. And he did have another hand trap, but luckily it wasn't in the Ash, it was just another failure. So we go Diviner Entest, chain one, Diviner chain two. Entest to pop the back row. He obviously has to chain it. And then he looks like he adds his Dormouse for crackback on the next turn, but there won't be a next turn, just as a heads up. Cool. So he recurs back his White Rabbit, and then we get our. So it's our Chain Link 1 low, Chain Link 2 White Rabbit because we're priority player. And then he Veilers, which is fine. At least we have the low on board. Like it's not the end of the world if low is actually stopped. It's just what's actually worse is when you just don't even get to low at all with this deck. Like you low is such an integral part of the deck, and that's why we obviously played at three. So he went and he set off the White Rabbit, the GWC06, which is special summon from Banishment or Graveyard, but obviously he has nothing. So it's again just more follow-up for next turn. Cool. Then we go Trius, add Skull Guardian, dump the prayers. Then we go Chaos Angel. Cool, yeah, very nice play here just to kind of again attack his resources that he's going to attempt to use on the crackback. Because if he can't actually use this trap right now, right? So if I actually go ahead and target it, it's just gonna get banished and he's not gonna be able to use it because there's nothing in the banishment to actually like, you know, use for cost because he just set this turn. Awesome. So yeah, we definitely check it. We respected his crackback, and then we went for um wait, what did I just do here? This looks like a little bit of a cheat. Oh no, the Chaos Angel left the field. Why did it leave the field? Anyways, I think the misplay was just I wasn't supposed to remove the low, but just the Chaos Angel. Pro tip, guys, like you with Saphira doesn't actually care whether or not you're using light monsters for your ritual summon, so once you banish from the grave. But your prayers does. Another card that doesn't care about your attributes, like light, darks, fires, whatever, in terms of ritualing, is also going to be your blessings. So keep that in mind. Blessing Saphira needs light, does not need lights. Your prayers absolutely does need lights. So here we go. Effects to add, low comes back, but it should have never really left. And then we went after clearing the White Rabbit into our Fiendsmith line. In my mind, after he had exhausted two hand traps, I wasn't sold on low and Skull Guard on the field with like no way to get to Ceravis. So there is a world where I could have linked for Dino Mundo, and then my low coming back would have added either the trap or blessing, so that way we can get an additional interrupt. But I decided, you know what? Let's get the like. I was feeling very confident because I knew that the Dormouse was in hand. So what I ended up, with that knowledge that he is one Dormouse and then one likely is just a brick. I felt more confident in Caesar actually with this game state just because Caesar was two interrupts to the potential three. But in hindsight, I think either or was okay. Like Caesar's fine, like I was winning, or potentially, um, you know, the what do you call it? The low Skull Garden and then maybe blessings would have been nice, just because then that would have meant after I use my negate, I can get Ceravis on board and negate a link summon. I believe he like drew for turn a magma. So if he was normal summon Dormouse, effect, banish something. Okay, Caesar negate, whatever is in the banishment. And then he goes new chain, mag target, the white rabbit that's engraved, Caesar again, destroy it. Game. That's it. That's literally game. I then went with Caesar just because the Fiendsmith line is really good in grind, and that game state definitely looked very grindy. Awesome. Let's get into the next round. So we lost dice. He kind of bricked. We had a lot of gas, so we're feeling good. All right. So right off the get-go, I also want to call out, he's playing the Fiendsmith variant. This guy, also my good friend, shout outs to Jeff. He like in real life actually plays this, I believe the Kashtira version with some Fiendsmith, or I believe he's experimenting with like some of the cash cards with Sky Striker. But anyways, guys, there's the Fiendsmith variant. There's also the Sky Striker variant, but then there's also a Kashtira variant. I personally believe I'm of the thought that the Fiendsmith variant is actually the most dangerous version, just because even when you Lancia them, the Fiendsmith engine is still quite potent to that, to that hand trap of Lancia, right? Because we're gonna go -1 right now, just to completely shut down their entire 5 cards of play, with exception to the Engraver, right? So the way to think about the matchup, and definitely keep this in mind, guys, when it comes to Malice, is like, yes, you're absolutely 100% shotgunning the Lancia. It's not something like, when we used to, when like if you guys ever played like shifter decks, like you're not supposed to ever shotgun the shifter. Like for example, if you're facing fire back in like the last format and you had shifter in hand and they go wanted and draw, you would let them first like commit their witch, and then witch like would set deception add Hollowed Azamine, and then when they activate Hollowed Azamine, you chain the shifter. And the reason you do that is it gets rid of the Hollowed Azamine and banishes it, but then it also means that they're going -1 because of the fact that they're going to need a tribute for their summon of the Black Witch. Completely different circumstance with Lancia. With Lancia, you absolutely must be shotgunning this card. But do keep in mind when it comes to like your hand economy, if you are going to be shotgunning it, you're technically, theoretically saying in this game state that like I'm just going to play with these 4 cards to, potentially cooking most of their engine, and then if they have any kind of other cards at play, those potentially could be live. In this case, he obviously has the Engraver, which is 100% live. Full combo is still absolutely live under Lancia, and then he also has the Thrust to essentially lock us out of the game state by adding face up the D barrier. So one of the cool things about this matchup too is also going to slightly cover not just the matchup against Malice, but like actually how to play through D barrier, which is really, I think, integral to this game. So I'll definitely touch on that, just because in this format, guys, regardless of whether you're facing Malice or not, whether it's Ryzeal, Fiendsmith Ryzeal, whatever it may be, because of the existence of Ryzeal Detonator, which is essentially like, in my opinion, like this modern format's version of Kashtira Rise Heart, because of that card's existence, deck building is really actually revolving around that one extra deck monster in that deck, believe it or not. The reason people are playing things such as Triple Tactics Talent, Thrust, even myself, look, my hand has actually got the talents as well, is because that card exists and it's just so powerful and it applies a lot of pressure from the outset. Like from the get-go, right out the gate, it starts popping everything. And in our matchup as well, like if you're like normal summoning low or like normal summoning divine, or you need to kickstart your combos with any of like the continuous spells like blessings or barrier, well, you're kind of shit out of luck just because they're gonna be able to pop in and you're not gonna get any effects. So that's where like our matchup in this current format with this deck is actually quite challenging, because you need other cards such as Saphira as and Nadir Servant, ultimately, or even the Fiendsmith stuff, to be able to out their Rise Zeal Detonator in the meta. But anyways, that's kind of an aside. So what you're gonna see here is we're gonna be obviously lancing in using Lancia in the draw phase. And the reason you want to do this is if they go main 1, you no longer can shotgun it. They go main 1, let's say they go Allure of Darkness, and a lot of builds do play Allure. What ends up happening is they actually, and then you chain Lancia. The ruling here is they get to draw 2 and then just reveal a card and keep it in their hand. It doesn't go to the grave, and it definitely does not get banished. So you're ultimately giving your opponent a free pot of greed when you don't necessarily need to be doing so. So you may as well just be shotgunning the Lancet, because it's a completely different circumstance than when we used to be able to actually hold Shifter if you ever play like a Shifter deck. So you hold Shifter, you let them commit something that's graveyard dependent, but you do not hold the Lancet because the existence of cards like Allure of Darkness, for example. So cool. He goes Engraver, Engraver for Tract for Lurie. Again, very linear stuff with the Fiendsmith stuff, but very good. Goes Requiem for um He goes Lacrima for the trap, which is again really good because that means he's gonna be able to end on like a Caesar, and then he'll have a Desiree Sand for a spot removal. So that'd be two special summon negates as well as spot removal. So even under Lancia guys, like you're not kind of out the woodworks here. You're still kind of in it, and you want to actually see where they go, and just be mindful that like this format is punishing, right? Because of cards like the Fiendsmith engine as well as the you know the thrust that he's about to use to set barrier. Cool. Let's go to the next play. So he goes, looks like for Necroquip, makes Caesar Dotscape. He actually uses Dotscape to get Link Karibo. I think he recognizes that I might actually be top decking like an impermanence to stop this card, which is quite a smart play. Like he could have actually went SP and had an additional SP Caesar as well as like the set bear that we're about to see, but he actually went for a Link Karibo to negate a trap, which is actually it's quite smart because it means he doesn't have to necessarily commit too much out of his extra deck, and he has a pretty good solution to anything that might stop the impermanence of TD Caesar, which is pretty cool to see. It's definitely a smart play. I definitely enjoyed what he did there. Very like big brain move, I would say. And then yeah, right off the get-go, he obviously set the barrier. It was just happening. So cool. Again, we're gonna navigate through this. Through going second yet again against this matchup. We did Lancia this one. A couple of learnings that you're going to take from this round is one, actually how to play through barrier after getting thrusted and they set the barrier, how to out, half decent board with Voiceless with barrier as well as Caesar and even like a trap negate. And look at that, I actually top decked the imperm. So his judgment call was 100% correct because this is now going to trade one for one with the Link Revo. But thankfully we have the talents. So that's one. One is we're going to learn how to play through actual barrier with a ritual deck. And then we're also going to be, still breaking into like a pretty half decent board from that Malice archetype. Awesome. So let's get into it. First thing that I believe I did is I started off with Saphira because I wanted to actually just get a sense of how much deep water are we in. Because if I go Saphira and I added the Ceravis, and he doesn't negate the Saphira, right? If he doesn't negate it, the chances at him having an Ash Blossom in hand are significantly lower because Ashing Saphira is 100% correct. It's a great card to Ash because it's a dump and a add. It's doing three things. It's dumping, it's a Foolish Burial, it's a search, and it's also gonna put the actual Saphira in grave so you can actually use it as a ritual summon itself. So it actually does three things. So ashing it is quite good. It gets rid of two of those three things. We added the Cerebus, not Skull Guardian, because we knew that with this hand, we needed to dump like a Garura or like an Entus to like check the back or whatever, or like pop this or whatever to get our Phlegmatic Maximus to be able to use that body to just continue to draw cards. So with my hand here, my entire strategy here was just draw as much as possible and build up enough counter resources to out this whole board, but still be in a significantly good spot with whatever I might draw in terms of engine to get where I need to be in terms of, having the appropriate follow-up to actually go into my ritual summons next turn. And you'll see how we're gonna do that. In a perfect world, like it's easy to add a barrier. You just use like your spell, or you could even like just use your Saphira and like will obviously chain it. If they're a bad player, they might just use it. They might shotgun it at some point, even when you haven't committed the ritual play. Like it does happen. It will absolutely happen against some players in like let's say like a regional level. Like you're gonna have so many different like levels of seniority when it comes to a regional level event. So that's one way. Like the best way, in my opinion, is actually your normal diviner trios tags out, and then specials the low sets you barrier then adds you actually blessings, so then you can actually ritual summon on your opponent's turn. Okay, that is the best way to actually play through barrier is to actually ritual on your opponent's turn with the help of blessings. Always prioritize that line Then you also have a low as well as a trias to be able to synchro those off and actually deal some damage, right? You're gonna get a 3500 beat stick, and then you're gonna be able to banish something, target banish something, which is not non-destruction removal. This is why, folks, you never leave home without your Chaos Angel. Like this format is, in my opinion, is like all about thrusts and talents, but like the biggest sleeper card, in my opinion, is your Chaos Angel. Like that's, in my opinion, the best extra deck monster that any of us could be summoning. And with Voiceless, especially with my build with a small Fiendsmith package that I'll cover, I can actually make Chaos Angel with both those engines, with both my Fiendsmith engine and my Voiceless engine. And with the Fiendsmith engine as well, I can actually make it light and dark Chaos Angel if I want to. But for the most part, like the light one is just fine because it's unaffected by monster effects, which is really good. In this case, we're not going to be doing that though. There's not going to be a Chaos Angel play just because I don't have the Diviner. So it's not going to happen unless I draw into it. But eventually, I don't think I do. And so what I end up doing is essentially prioritizing the strategy of drawing as much as possible with our deck and seeing as much interruptions as possible, potentially even, again, ritualing on my opponent's turn with the help of blessings. And then also, just making sure that we have a lot of good follow-up and a lot of very good impermanences. Later on, you're also going to see the importance of like in a simplified game of like what your actual boss monsters should be against Malice, which is actually going to be your Cerebus and not your Skull Guardian. And I'll get to why that is in a second. So immediately after we add, we checked for Ash. We're going to imperm the Caesar. He's forced to use Link Karibo here. So he goes Link Karibo and he negates it. Then we go add to draw. And then we drew another imperm. Then I made the judgment call that I was gonna hold this imperm as part of like my M board and not like go ahead and try and imperm this again, just because I knew that I was gonna be able to out this, so I might as well just use Nadir to basically out the Caesar itself. Cool. So we go Nadir, set Entis, add Max, Nadir to pop the Caesar, so we're good. Then we go Maximus. I ask him anything here. Like there is a world where he goes Featsmith in Paradise and goes to send this. I don't think he's wrong for holding it. Here's why, because I drew so much off of talents. Like he only knows the Cerebus, right? He only knows the Cerebus, and in his mind, maybe it's like, well, like, is there even a point to using it now if he's just gonna chain the Cerebus, right? Like that's the amount of pressure that like a barrier adds Saphira for Cerebus, or just like Saphira for Cerebus actually does. Like this is our miss, guys. Like if you ever like face a Dino player, like this is miss for us. If you know that you can easily confirm another like level 7 or higher light body, you always want to see this card in your hand. Like if you want to play two, you can play two. Like I personally don't, but like it's probably not that bad. It's like just a great card to like counter all the hand traps that target in this format. So like Veiler, Imperm, Mourner, all that is stopped because of Cerebus. Even interactions like Detonator or even like, Desiree Sand off of Fiendsmith in Paradise can be negated, right? It's really, really good. So I think that's why he held it. He knew that I had three unknowns, which could be like so many different parts of my engines. And so he just didn't go for the Fiendsmith Bride. So it wasn't an incorrect mistake. It's a mistake if he actually knew what was in my hand, but he doesn't. So it kind of works in your favor that like although we're not seeing like the best engine here, that he actually sticks to his guns and actually does the correct play under the assumption of like no hand knowledge except Cerebus that it's not the right time for the send. All right. Moving on. So I go Garura. He does not send anything worthwhile. He could have went pack bit, but again, same thing. I could just negate the pack bit as well. And he knows this. He knows Cerebus, right? So then I go for the draw, which gets me another imperm as well as the Skull Guardian. This is crazy. This game's kind of crazy because I saw all three imperms, but like whatever. Like let's just go with it. So he barriers as chain two to Saphira, which makes sense. So here all I do is set three, including the Radiance, which actually was going to be a very, very critical card that we're going to be using to essentially stop him. Like this combo right here, in terms of two imperms, a Cerebus in hand and Ash, and the trap is actually gonna allow us to ritual summon on his turn and show you guys why Cerebus is actually your best bet against the Malice matchup. Cool. So he in the end phase obviously goes Lacrima for Requiem, then he draws for turn. He goes Malice, P White Rabbit. I go immediately Radiance just because it is main and the Radiance can only be used in the main. Then I chain three imperms to stop it because we're in a simplified game state, right? We're in a simplified game state because he used his hand traps and he just committed his normal summon. So it's 100% simplified game state, arguably. And his like he's got his Fiendsmith stuff in rotation, sort of. Yeah. They're in rotation. They're in rotation. Cool. So it looks like we go low. Res, I go low as a trigger, then he goes chain to Fiendsmith in Paradise, and then he sends the Desiree. Here, I believe he does kind of misplay. His misplay here is he should have went Desiree send the blessings because immediately if he knew that, well, first of all, he knew that Cerberus was in hand, and this is going to negate his inherent special skills, his link climbing from his extra deck. So he knew this was in hand. So it's a misplay because I think he sends low. I think to some capacity he was worried that like if he doesn't send low, uh, I'm gonna basically like gridlock him out of my of attacking and still somehow get to Cerebus. Anyways, it's just one of the benefits of playing, a roguish deck at this time. Like this is probably like tier two, maybe like 1.5 at best at this point. So it's one of the benefits that guys keep in mind in like these types of meta matchups where like we know what they're on, we know how to stop them. They don't necessarily know 100% the same how to deal with us given their circumstances. So he sends the what do you call it? The low. Then I asked the Requiems because we didn't want him to um like send anything else to like, gain the ability to really go off into like Desiree. Because if he gets to Desiree somehow, like it's a little bit of a tough game because I also recognize like if he wants to bring out his engraver, he's going to have to send back either his Desiree or his Requiem. Most often, it's obviously going to be a Desiree because your Requiem has effects. Like he could potentially go summon the Engraver, then go Requiem, and then is GG's from there. Like we didn't want him to go Requiem, special, Lacrima, Lacrima send another Engraver, and now he absolutely can land on an Engraver send with its own effect and Desiree. So we stopped that altogether with the Ash Blossom. That was pretty critical. That's why I think like the Fiendsmith version, like anything Fiendsmith is just really dangerous because it forces you to like commit your hand traps one way or another. You're either aiming your hand traps in the direction of like the Malice stuff or the Fiendsmith stuff. Like against Kashtira or Skystriker, like you rarely actually have to do that. You can just kind of either stop their lane climbing or even just hand trap like your actual Malice edge. But the Fiendsmith stuff is a little bit different because it's that strong, it's that powerful. Like even under Lancia, he was able to still get on a pretty hefty board. Barrier, two Caesar materials, a trap negate, plus hand traps. Sorry, guys. My cat is at the door. And she's just being a little bad. She's just clawing at the door, so apologies for that. Cool. So next up, what do we got here? So he ends up sending low. Okay, not bad. He brings out the engraver, and then we go blessings and we go Cerebus, and then low trigger back. And then he tries to here actually send the Cerebus, which is 100% correct, but this is where our second imperm is waiting for him, and we stop the engraver. In fact, we had to do this because he already committed his normal summon, which means his next play is likely going to have to be a link summon. So anything that comes out of the link summon right now, depending on what it is, whether it's like Lizardos or Splash Mage, just to be able to like actually like send, White Rabbit to the grave, banish it, and then bring it back, or like bring it back and continue to like link climb. All that is going to be stopped because of Cerebus. And keep that in mind, guys, when you're going first. When you're going first, and I'll show you my deck list, like your priority is actually going to be getting this on board. Skull Guardian is still important, like you still need it as part of your M board. But what you want to actually do is not interact with anything against Malice. Like they go alert, do not Skull Guardian that. If you have hand traps, sure, you can stop it, but don't Skull Guardian because you're wasting an Omni on just like alert. What you're actually gonna use Skull Guardian for is breakers. You're gonna reserve your Skull Guardian to handle any potential breakers, such as like a Talent Steal or like a Book of Eclipse or like a Thrust or whatever it is. You're gonna stop those cards, and then you're gonna keep Ceravis as like the top dog, as like your main gambit to basically stop their link clouds. Because watch what happens. He goes to link line, he goes Lizardos, and on summon what Lizardos can do is literally banish this for cost. And all of a sudden he's got Link 2 on board, the White Rabbit, and then the Engraver to go into like Link 4 plus plays. It's pretty crazy. Like you don't want that. So Ceravis completely just stopped all that in one foul swoop. And the other thing too with Blessings, because the monster can't be destroyed by battle, he couldn't go battle and crash this, even if he made anything else. So I immediately saw the line, banished it. He doesn't get his effect. Um, he ends turn, right? It's this card is a turn ender, guys. Cerberus is a turn ender. Then we draw another Ash Blossom, so that's pretty good. And then when we went for it looks like Blessings, yes, add Saphira. Very classic play because that's why we only play the two because Blessings can always get us our banished Saphira back. He reborns, we get our Skull Guardian, okay. And then he goes to set, it looks like MTP7, which adds, and then if he controls a link, he can banish one. Yeah, I mean, we control three cards, so he wanted to leverage the non-target banish, but we have the Ash to check it because although this can special from the extra deck, because it can add from the deck as well, it is ashable, which is really nice. Like ashing MTP7 is like really, really key. It's a really good card to ash. So he uses it, we ash. Okay, then we go Skull Guardian. Um, he scoops here, and as he should. I think one of the things that I did there was I used the bot age in case I needed to go into any kind of like I used the Skull Guardian body age in case I needed to go into any kind of what do you call it? Like Dynamondo plays, just because the deer was used the previous turn, it wasn't used this turn, so now I can't touch my extra deck. Um, And yeah, like yeah, you just keep this on the field because I know you also had, what do you call them? A lot of the Bestials in this deck as well. And so I went for Skull Guardian. Ultimately, what I could have done as well is like potentially when Lo comes back, you get the barrier out something. I could probably get to two Skull Guardians or like Skull Guardian, Cerebus, whatever, and just like punch for game. Like this was 100% going to be game this turn. But yeah, ultimately, guys, again, the important thing here is you use your Ceravis to stop the link lines because you can just outright banish some of their link summon monsters. You see Lizardos, you see Splash Mage, you just hit those, and then if you're able to actually loop your Ceravis summon using blessings, that's even better. I was actually at one point I was actually siding the old man. I know it's a brick to a certain degree, but with the old man as well, the ceiling is even much higher because you're now actually in some turns able to loop Cerritos three times. A little overkill, I know, like especially if you have hand drops, but my build isn't running it right now. Like it's okay without him as well, but if you're doing it right, you're able to, I think, get two Cerberus negates in any given matchup against Malice, which is pretty cool. Awesome. So yeah, we did it. We 2-0'd Malice. We went second both times. We saw really good cards, I think, drawing. And yeah, we went up against, I think, in my opinion, the scarier version of Malice. It's the Fiendsmith variant, right? So let's talk a little bit about the deck list itself. So I'm probably gonna take this list to regionals. And against Malice, again, we go to, the basics of what's actually good against them. And so the deck list that I'm taking the regionals this weekend absolutely is built around that archetype. It's built around beating that archetype, but also the Fiendsmith Rysel deck, and just outright being able to generally deal with any like Fiendsmith engine or any like Fiendsmith variant deck. So I'm playing a list of 44. No, it is not a small list just because I have included a very small package of the Fiendsmith stuff while still keeping Nadir Servant. I love Nadir actually in combination with the Engraver, the Fiendsmith stuff. You might think that they conflict, and you might think that maybe I shot myself in the foot in terms of what my extra deck choice options are because like it is tight. I'm not gonna lie. What's tight right now in is my extra deck, and like there were some compromise. Like for example, I want to play Typhon, but there's no space because I always felt like if you're playing cards like Typhon, you're probably losing anyways. You're just kind of like very situationally have I survived after using Typhon. I find like usually like the opponent has like really good crackback and cards for reserves for follow up that like Typhon just kind of stalls the inevitable. So I was able to cut that, for example. But I actually really like the Fiendsmith stuff with Voiceless, with Nadir, just because like where do they hand trap you, right? Like are they gonna stop the Fiendsmith stuff? Are they gonna stop the Voiceless stuff? Are they gonna stop your Dogmatica engine, right? Like Dogmatica is its own engine. Like Nadir Servant with Maximus is its own engine and it's right, arguably. So having those three engines that synergize is actually really, really key. And I've talked enough why, like in other videos, why I believe like they synergize, and I'll touch on like little stuff here and there, but yeah, bear with me. So going back to the conversation of Malice, you have to play Ash. You're gonna Ash some of their trap cards. Might be able to Ash White Binder in the banishment pile. Meg is not great against them, but it does come up where like if you do see the Meg, which is again really good against the Fiendsmith stuff, so you always hit the Engraver that's coming out the graveyard. If you're like really, really certain you're gonna be okay, you potentially could hit the Requiem that's coming out the graveyard to equip to something. I find they can still end on some pretty like they could potentially still end on actually Desiree without Requiem, but they can't do that if you banish their Engraver. So you kind of have to pick your poison. Like if you use a Bestial against Malice, and if they're playing Fiendsmith stuff, and you banish like um the Engraver, you stopped their line for the turn, but they will have Fiendsmith stuff for crackback. Keep that in mind as a resource. But if you hit the Requiem, you stop their long-term game because they're probably only gonna be able to fit one Requiem in the Malice archetype if it's like if they're not playing like Fiendsmith Control, they only have one Requiem. Just make that assumption. So yeah, pick your poison. I always just go for the Engraver, like save myself from that turn because our deck can FTK quite easily with Skull Guardian. It's like a 41k beat stick, right? Like why couldn't you FTK? A Meg is also really nice because it adds you obviously Saphira and Endphase or even Cerevis. There is a world where I fit a Jerusalem in this, and then Jerusalem against like Ryzeal crashes into what you call it, the Ryzeal detonator, and then sends it during the damage step, can't be responded to. If they have cross, they have it, they can obviously still negate that on res, but Jerusalem interacts really well with detonator, but I didn't play it. Nib, 100% a card you have to be maining this format. It's really good against anything Fiendsmith. It just keeps that whole engine in check once they get their two level sixes on board. And then when they get like five summons, just be mindful of like what effects they're resolving, just because if you nib them at a really good time, like beyond five summons, you're potentially like actually single-handedly ending their turn. I've seen that happen on like numerous occasions where one Nibiru actually like kind of does them in. If they have the extenders, like Malice in the Underground potentially like held or like some of the Sky Striker stuff, like maybe they might still be able to combo, but you may have potentially slowed them down from getting everything that they are going to land on. But just be mindful. Like you want to like what the pros do with Nibiru is they're keeping track of the names, right? So like um Malice, so for example, like they'll remember when their Chessy Cat banishment effect was used. They'll remember when like their White Rabbit effect was used. They'll remember if Dormouse was used, right? There's only three monsters. They're gonna remember that like they've used, all their different Malice names in terms of especially something that sells from the banishment zone. And if they have, and then you nib, you're probably in a pretty good standing because regardless of what follow-up they get, whether it's Malice in the Underground or anything, they're not going to be able to get to any more Malice names to continue link climbing. They're going to have to like figure something else out, like use some other extenders like Bestials or things like that to extend. It could still happen when they do, but you're going to significantly cut them off if you're like nibbing and they've used their extenders like Malice in the Underground, or if they've used some of their stuff like the Sky Striker stuff, or like their Fiend Smith engine, and you've nibbed them. So bad. Seeing this card single-handedly just stop Malice, if you're lucky. I'm still playing three Purge. I kind of like moved down to two at one point for this because I was so tired of getting locked from the extra deck. Like it hurts, guys, when like you can't use your Anima or you can't use your Necroquip Princess, or you can't use like your Chaos Angel, like or even your SP Little. It kind of hurts. There's a world potential originals. I just play Droll actually or Ogre for this, and just kind of get like the same value. But for now, I'm keeping it because it's less. It's more cards actually, like alongside Imperm, where I don't play into talents or thrusts because my event this coming weekend is absolutely gonna be like loaded with players using those cards, and then so are we. Like we're using obviously talents, two in the main, one in three in the three thrusts in the side. There's a world where I cut one of these for something else, like a pot maybe. I don't know yet. But right now, like I'm pretty set on this list. And then imperm, yeah, like if they go normal summon Dormouse, imperm. They have something set, just imperm. Call the bluff. Always call the bluff because they run these traps usually as ones, guys. Like it's one, two, three, and like a 40 card deck. Like what's set is usually something that is not these trap cards, right? Like for the most part, I don't think that whole like mind game that they play actually works. You should not be holding your imperm for something else because if they have it, they have it. Just they have it, they have it. You're probably not gonna even actually be winning that round because they're able to dodge and their engine doesn't just kind of eats hand traps. Like cards like Ash, Imperm, Purge don't actually do very much against them. Nibiru is your best bet. But obviously in the side we have something like Lancia, which is really good. Uh, I don't have any Fuvulos personally, but like it's not that I'm priced out or anything. I can easily get them. I just didn't want to spend the money right now. Like I've felt like I'll be okay without it, but in reality, like these should be Fuvulos against that matchup. So then you put in your Fuvulos as well as your Lancia. So you have six cards sided in against that matchup. And you'll have Nibiru, you'll have the Fuvulos as well as the Lancia against Malice. So yeah, Fuvulos is very, very key at cutting that deck off because they're gonna get so scared of like making you draw monsters, like things that can break into their board or just like outright stop them. Perulia just doesn't do it. They only normal summon once and special summon from the hand like ever. So in theory, these should be Fuvuloses, but I went with Perulia to actually have a stronger matchup against Ryzeal for my event that's coming up. Perulia arguably is a stronger um what do you call it, card against that deck because you actually draw quicker because they have to go like special summon their hand, their monsters, their rising monsters from their hand. Then you draw instead of waiting for like their duo drive, and then you draw something, and then at that point it's too late. So yeah, I went with Perulia. It was cheaper, and I just felt like it covered like more matchups. And who knows, maybe like they're playing the cash version of Malice. If they play the cash version of Malice, you definitely put this in. This is gonna be really good because they go like special summon unicorn, you draw one right there. Boom. Really good. So yeah, siding going first, it looks like this. I have a pretty good matchup. You guys saw it. I 2-0'd the gentleman. Yeah, not much to say there. Siding looks like this. You're gonna put in every single thrust that's humanly possible. You'll side one of the talents out, so you technically have like four talents if you want. You're gonna go for your Sanctum. Sanctum is really good in comparison to a card like let's say like Symbol Archfiends. I'd recommend actually Sanctum just because under cards like Symbol Archfiend, which I know is like an option that like Lab would play against link-based decks. This card was great against like Tempai and like the Snake Eye decks in the past that obviously got butchered on the ban list, but What this says is essentially it's like Tikaboo for the extra deck. Like your opponent and yourself for the turn that you use this can only control one card of each type, including rituals. And luckily for us, we have like we're gonna set this play, and then it doesn't matter at that point. But your opponent won't be able to have like more than one link. They're gonna go like link something, they're stuck to that link. That's it. Like they won't be able to link it. The problem with a card like this is they can still potentially go allure, SP pass, just SP hand traps, and still potentially like win. Like it does happen. So you want to actually stop all of that with Sanctum because Sanctum special summons from the deck your Lancia, and then your Lancia just completely shuts down not just their engine but also things such as like Allure of Darkness, for example. Cool. I digress. So going first, we're gonna do that. Well, obviously the Solemns go in because these are either gonna be cards that stop your opponent's board break. Because like let's say they go Book of Eclipse, I'd probably Skull Guardian that first. And then if they like I don't know chain Droplet or chain some other like nonsense, then you use Solemn Judgment. Like you never want to go Judgment and then hold the drop. What do you call it? The Skull Guardian. What you actually want to do is essentially check for a droplet, like check for a droplet or like check for something that outs the Skull Guardian because we do lose to those types of board breakers. So by going, let's say they go Eclipse, chain two Skull, and they go like chain three droplet, chain four Solemn. We win. We win that interaction. But if the reverse happens, what happens is like they go Eclipse, we go Solemn Judgment, done. Then they go droplet. You just lost the value of your Skull Guardian. And now they're going to be able to actually out your Ceravis as well because Droplet can select multiple targets. Well, it does not target, but it can make multiple selections. So always, 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 you save this on the back burner for like when you absolutely have to, and to essentially check your Skull Guardian. So like Ceravis checks the links, Skull Guardian checks your Ceravis. It protects your Ceravis. And then your Solemn protects your Skull Guardian. Those are the layers of operation that you should be thinking about in terms of how you're protecting your, you know, the sanctity of your end board. So Ceravis is your main boss. You're constantly looping him to stop the link summons. Skull Guardian checks for breakers or checks for things that could out Ceravis. Your Solemn Judgment checks and makes sure that your Skull Guardian negate goes through to protect the Ceravis. So priority number one, priority number two, priority number three. Cool. You put in your call by, you don't want to get shifter. If you can snipe the shifter, you definitely go for that. Uh, yeah, put all these in, boom, boom, boom. I tend to side these out. You don't want to like nib yourself. I've had games where I have nibbed myself and it actually still works out because if we nib ourselves, it's not usually the end of the world because we have our back row, like barrier, blessings, the trap, things like that. Um, Imperms definitely leave in place of the Solemns. Don't play Bestials against them. They're just gonna plus. Let's go. Oh, I also against them going first. I do side out Fiendsmith because if they shifter us, you're just gonna be looking at a beautiful waifu lacrima all night long. That's not that's no fun. So yeah, maybe something like this. Keep like the purges. Take out Fiendsmith. Boom. This looks great. Like this is still a great deck going first. Yes, Nadir does lose to Shifter, but I mean, we already de-risked in terms of our siding pattern because if we get Shifted, so be it. We got Thrusts, we got the Sanctum, we have the three Lancias, we have Solemn Judgment to also check any of their potential link summons. We also have like still plays under Shifter, believe it or not, with the help of Prey Prep. Like there's a world actually I bumped this to three because it's really good into Malice. Because in a world where like we get Shifter, this adds you to hand, unlike Saphira. This gets like substantially more powerful under Shifter than Saphira. So there is a world actually this goes to three for my list, this regional. But yeah, I'm happy with this. Like if they have Shifter, they have it, and I see and I have Nadir, okay. They just want -1, and I use my Nadir on crackback because if I have a thrust, I'm surviving. I'm gonna go Sanctum and just lancing them on the next turn, and it's gonna be an effect. So yeah, if they try to turn skip you, you turn skip them back. That's the game here. You can again still potentially get to your Skull Guardian low under Shifter, like I've done it many times, or even just like Cerevis low or just Cerevis, like it's still pretty good. And obviously hand traps, Solemn, and Purge is really good. There is a world where it's not Purge, like there's a world where like it's actually like imperms to check like their normal summon. Either or is fine, like it is what it is. You keep your Ash always just for sighting patterns in case they actually go Perulia. Like if they play Perulia, and a lot of people will be playing Perulia because of Ryzeal, because it is a better card in comparison to Molcharmy against Ryzeal this format. So you always these days need to keep your Ash Blossoms in just simply to use as like additional call buys to check Perulia, because we do heavily lose to that card. Yeah, so going first, that's what I'm going to be doing for my event. Going second, you're gonna put all the hand traps known to man. Fiendsmith stays out of it, and then you just take out the Solemns because it's not good. Going, going second, you take out the Sanctum. Let me take out one more. I might like take out like another talent, and then obviously the call by. Yeah, and then if they have Shifter, what you do is, like you're gonna shock on the Lancia. If they change Shifter, they still lose, by the way, guys. What happens is Lancia always beats Shifter, but only for that given turns because Shifter is going to be online for 2 turns. So yeah, like if they Shifter you, they Shifter you, gain turn one, like what have you. But like Lancia is going to be super, super good if to just shut them down. If they have it, they have it. That's just how you should be thinking about Shifter. And again, we started out Fiendsmith, so like we're okay. Like we started out Fiendsmith. Nadir loses to Fiendsmith, sure, but at the same time, Nadir's a board breaker. Like if they set like traps. You can start like popping them with the help of Antas off the Nadir to be able to like preemptively make them use their traps, like for example, the one that banishes. So they get their value without necessarily like getting the advantage of like banishing something when it really, really matters against, you actually trying to develop a board that breaks into theirs. Cool. Let's exit. I'm not gonna save just because I want to talk about the extra deck, and that's the last thing we're gonna leave off as. Because I might get a lot of like hate in terms of the fact that I'm playing Fiendsmith with Dogmatica. Yes, they conflict, conflict to a degree, but like when has this deck not had any conflicts, right? Like when we played Mag, that conflicted with Purge. Purge conflicts with Ash. Imperm conflicts with Mag and Nibiru, right? Like these conflicts are just inherent to the game, in my opinion, not inherent to just the deck choice and the engines here. Like those conflicts just exist in every deck, in my opinion. And if you want to play Voiceless, like you kind of need your best cards. Like Purge is still a very, very broken card because it's going to be very hard to play around this because most people will just play to the one Ash. They're not going to suspect a Purge. They just simply not because it's really hard to plan like that when you're actually playing. And in some cases, like if you go Ash Purge, like in some cases, it's actually enough to stop them. Maybe not Malice, but who knows? Anyways, also like the other thing to note as well is like the main deck you're really planning for is like Fiendsmith Ryzeal. So like a lot of times if you see your mag or nib, like it's usually coupled with like Ash Purge, maybe not the Imperm. So you might get away with it that way. Like this does not conflict with this or this because the way they play, like they'll actually go Fiendsmith line first, mag checks it, then they go dual drive, and that's checked by the Purge. So you're getting your full value from the mag and your purge is still going to be active. Interesting theory, right? It conflicts, but the dynamic of gameplay makes the conflict more feasible for us. Pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm happy with my hand drops, 13 and 44. Like it's pretty solid. We're gonna see one or two. The format doesn't need a lot of hand drops to still pretty good. Hopefully, again, I win some of these dice rolls. Um, Yeah, I played the Fiendsmith stuff just because it also just it's that additional like ceiling to the deck, and it baits out so much. The other thing too is guys like one diviner, and I'll show you guys in a sec, is like full Fiendsmith combo plus Dynamona to two set background. I'll show you guys in a second. If you have this, like your Nadir afterwards, it gets even crazier. Like let's actually take a look at it. Let's go into the duel room. I'll go solo, we'll host. We're just gonna do like a two card call. Like we're gonna open like let's say um the Nadir as well as the Diviner. Oh, so we actually did it. We actually we got the Diviner and the Nadir. Let's say we go uninterrupted, right? Here's what you're gonna do. You obviously kickstart with your Diviner. Again, guys, just theory stuff. You're obviously gonna get stopped, but that's how you have like five cards in hand and not two. But in theory, this is what the addition of Fiendsmith, while still keeping your Nadir Servant stuff in, does. So you obviously prioritize your Voiceless engine as well as your Fiendsmith engine. You have access to it. Nadir is always like your Hail Mary. Because you don't want to lock yourself out of the extract. If you open with this, your Fiendsmith stuff in your hand is dead, so which is not cool. We'll go on to this. This adds Saphira, Dump, Skull Guardian. All right, cool. Here, what we're gonna do is now Fiendsmith. We're not going like let's you would assess here, right? Like let's say you have like I don't know, you don't need Diviner to go Fiendsmith. You actually had the Engraver in hand. Like you do that, and then your Diviner just is strictly voiceless stuff. But like let's say here, you had like the Engraver in hand, like you can make the call. You either lead with Voiceless, get hand trapped, then play Fiendsmith. But I personally would start with Fiendsmith. They can hand trap that, reveal their hand economy, then play Voiceless. Because you really want to end on Ceravis. Ceravis is going to be so, so crucial against Ryze as well as Malice. But anyways, back to theory. I digress. We'll go Close Moon. And then we'll go Wreck here. Boom. Wreck for Waifu Lacrima. We'll go for Waifu. Waifu dumps. Our studded Chad. Our Light Fiend Chad. Pro tip as well, one of the cool things with the Fiendsmith engine is you can actually go Necroquip. Um, you, what you would have done here is you keep this on, so we're not going to actually, yeah, we're not going to go for Sphere. Then you add here Saphira, all right? And now all of a sudden, you're like, let's say you led with your Engraver, and you got this far. If this gets like Ash or they Ash this, your Engraver is essentially replenishing itself because you're drawing one. Pretty nice. That means like you haven't actually like lost any hand advantage. You just your one engraver, like your line into Fiendsmith, stopped. Sure, you're not playing that stuff anymore, but like you're gonna draw a card. So if you start with engraver, you're drawing a card. You didn't lose a card. Um, so yeah, it gets like pretty nutty, especially having Nadir to draw even more later on. Nobody's playing um Nib in main, not Nib, Droll in main, in my opinion. I feel like if they are, they're just diabolical and evils because what they're saying is, I want to like really decimate Rogue, but then not respect Malice. I need to draw one because Saphira has that interaction with Necroquip. So busted. We drew low. So good. Um, Here, what I would actually do is assess, depending on how much hand traps, like let's say they lost a lot of hand traps. I'd probably be comfortable in going DD Caesar here. If they haven't used their hand traps, what I would actually do here is actually make um I would make the Skull Guardian because what's gonna happen here is chain link one low, chain link two Skull Guardian. You're gonna add your Ceravis off of this, and then low comes back. Boom. Here what will happen is if they nib, it doesn't matter because I think we can actually still end up on, depending on how you play this, you might still be able to actually get to sequence, depending on your hand. Sequence make Desiree, because this doesn't actually make, like it makes DD, but if they out it with Nib, you could potentially still make Caesar because you have enough, make sequence because you have enough, bodies. Um, but yeah, like I would do that. Add the Cerebus. Let's see. Boom. And guys, we got all this just from one card, one from one diviner. So like why wouldn't you play Featsmith? Like it's crazy. It's like literally the best engine to ever exist. Uh, and we'll go here. I really would make Caesar, and you'll see why in a sec. Because now the Skull Guardian is protecting your line, and then now your Caesar is protecting your um what do you call it? Oh my God, what is it? Dynamundo, this guy. So they synergize. Like you make this, you start with this, gives you value, gets you a draw. Then you make this to insulate the finish off for this. You finish this off, and then you go back to playing Voiceless. Yeah, then you go into Deer. Start drawing like crazy. Be mindful as well, folks. There is a world if you're facing like a Fiendsmith deck to some capacity. They run that stuff. They go like Desiree Sen, they try to out like your back row or Caesar. That's fine because you have Skull Guardian to stop it. And you also have your Cerberus. We also play talents for that reason as well. I find a lot of times we use Nadir to dump stuff. Like they might just maybe go Crbr or Entas. It's the risk that we've always taken with Nadir. So we'll add the max. There's a lot of times as well, a lot of moments where like if I'm happy with my board. Like let's say I don't know, I opened or drew into oh look at that. We actually drew the trap. At this point, I actually set this pass. I wouldn't jeopardize my board any further. Um, because in like depending on how much I've exhausted in terms of interacting with the hand, like let's say I exhausted Skull Guardian for something and or what have you, like maybe I don't want to risk them outing Caesar, but if we did go for it, like let's say we do have the Skull Guardian negate as well as Cerebus, you take it case by case. It's always a case by case thing in this match because it's a very fast paced match. You go like this. Okay. Yeah, just trying to show theory, just trying to show what two cards really gets you, and the fact that they don't actually conflict. Go chain one, chain two, withdraw, put like something back. Again, you have more cards in your hands, so like let's put the nib back. And then we'll go for our other spell for ritual summon. Out this. Boom. They go like I don't know, Dust or Ascend. You need to choose. I would go Skull Guardian Negate, keep the Cerebus in hand. Just because this checks nib, so you're not gonna like worry about leaving this guy just to check the nib. If they somehow like are able to like I don't know chain block, then you might be in like a little bit of trouble. But like even then, like the trap, all those draws, if they out some of this, like it's fine. They're literally wasting hand traps way earlier before you even resolved in a deer, right? So like they'd be like down to like two, three cards. For all you know, we still ended up here because you can easily play through hand traps because we have so much more. Like this was all just like a two-card combo. I honestly set the purge because purge does conflict with Caesar. Keep that in mind. Caesar's water, so just set this. Don't. Who cares? Like you don't have to keep it in your hand. So yeah, now we've got two special negates, Omni, a potential pop, but usually what I'm gonna do is actually use this for getting blessing on board. So let's role play. They go normal summon Dormouse, let them use their effect. They're gonna go effect of a banished Malice card, you're gonna negate that with Caesar. New chain talents to draw or take, you'll negate it. If you have a set solemn, they go droplet, they go anything else beyond that, you negate it. You always, always, always want to get to the point where Ceravis is just essentially protected and insulated. Even then, like even with Caesar, maybe you don't even use Caesar. Maybe you let them actually resolve their Malice monsters, then go Ceravis, then go Skull Guardian. The thing is, I believe for Malice, they can only use the effects once. It's not, you can only activate them once. So if you Caesar it, they can't actually use it again. Even the fact that you're negating the activation and destroying the card. They might potentially also like go Bestial, negate that shit, right? You might want to negate that because if a Bestial is gonna be like an extender plus a body, negate and destroy that, right? So Caesar takes care of those situations. If something's coming out the banishment, Bestials, it checks that stuff. Ceravis checks their links. Skull Guardian protects your Ceravis, and then your back row is either going to get you more Ceravis or is going to get you additional protection on the Skull Guardian, like the Solemn Judgment. Your hand traps, feel free to use things like your imperms and purges as you see fit. They don't play into talents, so you're always going to feel good about that, right? If they go allure, purge. Just purge it. If they go again, like engage, we don't lose to Widow Anchor because of our barrier. Let them resolve it. They might go just like their Link Climb with their drones card. So yeah. Yeah, Ceravis checks that. Oh, another tip. I wouldn't actually use the Ceravis on their striker like Link 1. I'd wait until they get to cards like Lizardos or like Splash Mage or even some of like their actual Malice links. That would be like really detrimental. Just because Ceravis, it will negate the summon and banish it. So those links never actually were legally summoned, which means they'll never actually be able to use their effects to bring them back once they're banished. Ceravis is actually really, really key. Don't let them cheat you. Like just because this banishes their monsters, don't let them cheat you guys. They can't bring it back because the game state doesn't even recognize that they successfully summoned that link. So yeah, that's it for that list. That was my rationale behind the deck building, as well as how I'd approach how to actually engage a deck like Malice and like what your end board should be looking like. I just wanted to confirm one last thing before I sign off. You take no damage. You can only use each of the following effects of Malice P once per turn. Yes, this is really key. So even if you negate the effect or negate the activation, it does not matter. They can only use that effect once. They can only set, for example, with White Rabbit, a trap once. You can only revive from the banishment pile once. So that's why Caesar is really good. And play Fiendsmith, guys. If you're not playing Fiendsmith this format, I don't know what you're doing. Like, there's a world as well. Like, if you told me tomorrow you had to pick Nadir or Fiendsmith, I might actually do Fiendsmith, believe it or not. I might actually go like Fiendsmith just because it's not like seeing Max guys is so painful. Like seeing Max with Nadir in hand is hands down one of the worst things ever. Like if I cut the Nadir, it looks like this. It's a 40. Like this is actually clean. Might actually even like I was debating some of this for the longest time. I was debating like more engravers and then maybe like I don't know another talent to break boards like 43. Like that's pretty clean. That's pretty crazy. Uh one last thing I wanted to also just as a pro tip around the what do you call it? The Fiendsmith stuff and my recommendation there. If you've stuck around that long, let's actually go do that. We're gonna open up with the one engraver. This only works if you have engraver, by the way, guys. Just heads up. If you do open the engraver, let's say you're facing. This is actually not really related to Malice. Let's say it's Ryzeal. You go engraver. You can actually turn your engraver into a board breaker, into Chaos Angel. You obviously add the tract. This is such a beautiful line. It's so, so clean. You're gonna go tracked. If you haven't gone Ash there, that's great. We will continue to combo. So you'll add Lurry, dump the Lurry. That cat just that came in is snoring in the background, guys. Your link into Rec. Here, let's say there's a Ryzeal detonator on board. You're gonna notice nothing so far is played into the detonator, and we won't. What we're gonna do is gonna go chain one, Requiem. If they want to chain their detonator, a Requiem can quick effect dodge. So let's say they're stupid. They go chain two, Requiem, uh, detonator, and then you go chain three, Requiem. Now all of a sudden what's gonna happen is you're dodging the detonator. Watch this, guys. Then you get two bodies summoned in the same chain. You're gonna get your Lacrima, and then you can get your Engraver out the graveyard. Do not use the Lacrima effect here to dump, I don't know, another Engraver or the trap. Don't do that. But now here you have a Light and Dark Chaos Angel because it's a level 4 and a 6. Boom. Look at that. Unaffected by the activated effects of lights, which means can't be negated by monsters, can't be popped. Boom. You'll target your detonator, banish. If they have cross, no problem. What we're gonna do is target the cross, banish the cross. They'll protect at that point, they'll negate. They'll have to because they don't want to like have their cross banished, might as well. And you can like go battle, attack, or maybe have like a Jerusalem on board, attack, crash, send. You've outed now Ryzeal Detonator, which they will more often than not get with just one engraver. And now you got potentially 5 more cards to play. Pretty crazy, right? Really, really good stuff with the Fiendsmith stuff. Yeah. Let me guys know what you think. That was like my in-depth, I guess, like masterclass with Voiceless against Maliss. We saw really good gameplay against, a decent Fiendsmith Malice deck. We showcased like where the strong points of our deck is against them. And we talked about like tech options against them. We even did like siding patterns. I think I did a pretty good job. It was like being very, very like concise and conclusive of like the ins and outs of how you should be thinking about the matchup. And yeah, I hope you guys like this type of content. It's definitely long format, but if you're serious about your gameplay, then you definitely probably are enjoying this type of content. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about my list for regionals as well. It's probably going to be like this. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.